Thanks everybody for coming out today. As you may have heard, my name is Bob Peltzer. I am a full-time retiree, one of the co-chairs of the Ottawa Valley Cycling and Active Transportation Alliance, and a part-time cycle tourist. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about cycle tourism and my experiences with it. So this is my view from the South. So my first experience with cycle tourism began about 50 years ago. I was a school teacher taking an after-school club out in the countryside for a weekend bicycle adventure. And while touring on a bicycle was fairly rare in those days, it wasn't unheard of. Back in high school, and possibly inspired by the movie Easy Rider, but not owning any motorcycles, some friends and I talked about riding our bikes across the USA. But there were no such things as bike routes, bicycle-friendly maps, or businesses to support such a venture. Plus, 3 months without girls to date seemed kind of out of the question, so talk was all that it was. But for me, the idea lingered in the back of my mind. This weekend outing, everybody hear me okay? Okay. Can't take the volume up because we don't have any control over that. That's what I'm going to do. It seemed pretty good in an empty room. All right. Anyway, that weekend outing was something new for all of us, both the kids and me. And our destination was the traffic-free Chesapeake, Ohio Canal Trail, which was a fairly new national park, just created about 10 years earlier, and not much more than a dirt track running from Cumberland, Maryland to Washington, D.C. Today, it's the most visited rail trail in North America, but more on that a bit later. We used some borrowed tents, had to spend a couple of weeknights after school getting the bikes ready. And it was a fun weekend, most of many more. The kids and I, we had a great time. More importantly, it nurtured desire somewhere in the deep folds of my brain. So now I got to skip forward to a few decades to the newly retired me. And I'm now in my mid-60s in this picture, and with enough free time for that old desire to resurface. Bicycles had remained part of my recreational mix throughout those years, and I was still in pretty good shape for a senior citizen. I think I still am. Scrolling through the internet one day, I came across an article about a bike ride across the state of Iowa. It was called Rank Ride, and it was a pretty big deal, attracting close to 20,000 cyclists to ride west to east across the state. Best of all, in my mind, were the images of Iowa's flat roads, mostly prairie, eh? So I learned 3 things from that trip. First, when you travel at bicycle speeds, you really see a heck of a lot more. And second, that I really enjoyed the adventure and freedom of touring on 2 wheels. And the third thing I learned was that Iowa definitely was not flat. One adventure led me to revisualize that old high school dream of a bicycle ride, an epic bicycle ride across the USA. And luckily, things had changed from 1969 to 2017, and there were now organized tours that would guide me safely from coast to coast. I signed up for that first epic tour and have since done many more, crossing 2 continents and most of a third on 2 wheels, riding through 12 different countries and 4 continents. I've learned that there are a heck of a lot of people getting into cycle tourism, and I've developed a good view from the saddle of what those people are looking for when they tour. A place that offers these things and knows how to market them to a cyclist will attract cycle tourists much like a person in the outback attracts flies. Number 1, first thing that I think a cycle tourist looks for, at least a newbie like me, is a safe route to ride. While some hardcore folks like me will ride just about anywhere these days, the greatest number of cycle tourists want the security of quiet, low or no traffic roads or routes. Luckily for us, we have such routes here, and we are creating more. Safe passage, safe highway crossings, cycle lanes leading to town, or partially or paved shoulders are all big pluses for the cycle tourist. Number 2 on my hit list is access. Every adventure needs to start somewhere, and having a place for the journey to begin and end is important. A place to park and unload near where your route begins or ends will make it far more likely that a ride will take place there. Signs that make these locations easier to find are also a big plus here. Number 3, the basic human necessities, a place to find food, drink, accommodations, washrooms, and even if those washrooms are just some well-placed blue rockets, they're all a good idea. If you have these, along with items 1 and 2, you're well on your way to being a place where cyclotourists will visit, and more importantly, spend time and money. A cyclotourist that's riding from day to day will spend roughly around 10 times more than a person out for a day ride. Think about that when you think about how cyclotourism can affect your economy. I want you to think about your town. How many of these things do you already have? How can a cyclotourist find them? Next up is information. And what is it good? What good is it to have all the above if nobody can find it? Signage along the route is important. So is online information. Cyclists hate going out of their way on some long, wild goose chase with no reward in line. More importantly, that signage and other information has to address their needs. No good sending them into town to find that the restaurants are closed or that the campground does not allow tent camping. If you own a hotel and have a secure place for bikes to be stored overnight, getting this information to cyclists will bring them to your door. Does your restaurant have a bike rack? Does it refill water bottles? Offer special deals to traveling road warriors? Get that message out there and they will come. Where is the nearest bike shop? Cycle shops along the route are pretty doggone important. They're more important to a cyclist than honey is to a bear. A bear can get along pretty good without honey, but a cyclist with broken pedal really needs a bicycle shop. Remember those cycle trips I told you about that I took back in the 70s? I broke a pedal on one of those trips and had to ride the final 20 miles, pushing the end of the crank with the ball of my right foot. No bike shops along that route, or at least any that I could find. Today, along that same route, I would not have that problem. Now we're going to talk about some bells and whistles. These can be as simple as a cold beer or a place, or an interesting place, to drink a cold beer, even if it's not a cold beer. Well, I lost my place here, excuse me. This, by the way, is a neat bar in Australia. And there are Canadian dollars and Canadian hats in there if you look carefully. The beer, by the way, was not cold, but considering we had just spent the last 75 miles riding through the desert of the outback, we were happy to find any watering hole we could find. Anyway, other things that might be of interest to a cyclist, especially on a hot day, and by the way that we could not find anywhere in the outback, were something as simple as ice cream treat. Maybe another thing you might find would be an interesting attraction. This one, by the way, is hidden in Renfrew County off the old Berry Bay Road. It's a memorial to the Scouts during the World War II in Poland and their resistance to the German occupation. If you ever haven't visited, find it, check it out. It's a hidden treasure of the Ottawa Valley. One of my earlier self-contained trips, those bells and whistles took form of a trailside open shelter where I could spend a rainy night, and a sign directing me to a nearby market that offered meals to go. In Korea, it was a little trailside cafe called Fishy Aroma. Excuse me, I skipped something. No, recent trip to Quebec, that's what that was. It was that lovely covered bridge in Wakefield. In Korea, there was a trailside cafe called Fishy Aroma. And we have a lot of these things here in the Ottawa Valley, less maybe the Fishy Aroma. And it's a pretty interesting place for folks that are just passing through. There are things that you see, especially if you're not velocitized passengers in a vehicle, zipping down a 400 highway at 120 kilometers per hour. I mean, the word bellow means bicycle. It also means fast, but not fast compared to a car. The low velocity of a cyclotourist makes it more likely that they're going to stop and see what it is to see. Next, I want you to keep in mind what you think a cyclotourist looks like. It may be a lot different, it may be a lot different than what you imagine. A cyclotourist of today looks a lot different than that of a few years ago, and there's far more of them. They're no longer just jocks and spandex, but they now come in all shapes and sizes, as well as all ages. Families with children are doing it, as well as folks on e-bikes. It's a tourism demographic that's growing larger each year. Before I step aside to our next excellent speaker, I need to say a few words about what cycle tourists don't need. For one, barriers on trails, especially those with loose gravel. Keeping the wrong sort of user off a trail is important, but it should not be done in a way that presents a difficult obstacle to go over or around on a gear-loaded bike or cause an accident. Another problem, cycle lanes that just end abruptly and dump you onto a busy road without any warning are often worse than no lane at all, as are busy road crossings that are unmarked. Any one of these things can turn an enjoyable experience into something in some place that a cycle tourist would rather forget. So right now, folks, take a look at your communities. Try to see it through the eyes of a rider on two wheels. Once you see what they see, and you see how to make it better, you're on your way to becoming a well-traveled cycle tourism destination, and your town is on its way to becoming, instead of a town on a trail town. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions for Bob before we move on? Comments or questions? Yes, Will.
Bob, out of curiosity, in Korea, did you do the Four Rivers Trail? Which trail did you do?
We did so many trails. We traveled all the way from Seoul down to Busan.
So you did the Four Rivers?
We went over part of that. We also went on some highways where there were some sites and things of interest that we wanted to see, or in order to find the accommodations that the group had lined up for us. But yeah, we did a bunch of trails, beautiful trails around Seoul. Matter of fact, in terms of cycle trails, South Korea is well ahead of Japan. They've got some beautiful trails down there.
Amazing. One of the things, I don't know, did you have the passport system whenever you were there?
No, we didn't have that.
All right. That's something, maybe just tell everyone. Sorry?
Come use my.
Yep.
Here, just hand it to you.
So one of the really cool things about South Korea is they have this passport system along trails. And so nearby to businesses and stops that might be of interest to a cyclist, they have these, what look like telephone booths. In there's a stamp. At the beginning of the trail, which for us was maybe, I think about 7 days long of a trail, we took our time, we went slow, ate lots of great food. I'm sure we stopped at the same spot. Anyways, they have a stamp. You get a passport at the beginning. If you finish your passport and get every stamp along the way, everyone loves some bling. For an extra $30, you can get yourself a little medal. You feel accomplished about it. It feels great. But also, you've kind of confirmed you've been everywhere along the way. That was something that really worked well when we were in Korea. That's something I'd love to see here as well. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, Chris.
Comment, add something.
So Bob and I have been friends for a number of years through tourism because he owned the Opiongo Mountain Resort. About 12 years ago, Bob retired, and one of the activities he got into was cycling. And tonight, Bob and I will cycle with our friends from the Peltzer cycling group. And what's been fun to watch, and Bob didn't touch on this, but someone's it's about community development. The number of people in our cycling group that would not have known each other and would not have gone on to do good things together in the community without this cycling group. Yeah, they would have met somewhere else possibly, but likely not. It's been so fun for Bob and I to watch all the friendships that have been made and just where they've gone in our community. And something Bob didn't touch on, and I might embarrass him, he is the most stylish dresser in the Peltzer cycling group. But when he started off with us, he was not.
It was cut off shorts and tennis shoes.
Well, cut off jean shorts and work boots.
Hey, by the way, your comment about Korea, that place I mentioned, Fishy Aroma, a little coffee shop, she didn't speak a word of English. But when we went there, all we stopped in for was coffee. She gave us, for some reason, baked sweet potatoes. And she was giving out puffs, which in South Korea they tend to use as face masks because of the smog and pollution that drifts in from their factories and those in China that they're downwind from. But a place called Fishy Aroma was one of the high points of our trip. Any other questions? I'm going to turn it back over to our facilitator here.
Thank you, Bob.